My name's Kevin. Back in college, I worked nights at this old roadside diner off I-70 in Missouri. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me a quiet place to study between customers. The diner was a 24-hour place, but weekdays were dead after midnight. Usually it was just me, the cook, a grumpy guy named Ray, and maybe one or two truckers passing through. But there's one night that sticks with me even years later. The night I decided I'd never work overnight shifts again. It was late, around 2:30 a.m. The diner was empty, no cars in the lot, just the hum of the refrigerators and the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. I was leaning on the counter, flipping through a textbook when the bell above the door jingled. A man walked in. He was tall, gaunt, maybe mid-40s. His clothes didn't match the weather. Heavy coat, scarf, gloves, even though it was warm for April. He kept his head low as he slid into a booth by the window. Something about him put me on edge. Not because he looked dangerous, but because he looked out of place. Like he didn't belong in any normal setting. I grabbed a menu, walked over, and did my usual spiel. Coffee? Something to eat? He didn't look at me. Just whispered, coffee. Black. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in days. I brought the coffee, set it down, and that's when I noticed his hands. They were shaking. Not the jittery kind of shaking you get from caffeine or nerves. This was uneven, jerky. Like every movement cost him effort. The spoon rattled against the cup as he stirred, even though he hadn't added sugar. I tried not to stare, but when he finally lifted his head, I wished I hadn't. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. But it was his expression that froze me. He wasn't tired or sick, he was hungry. And not for food. Ray was in the kitchen clattering pans, so it was just me and this man in the quiet diner. I forced a smile. You just passing through? He didn't answer. He just kept stirring, metal spoon clinking against ceramic. Over and over. Finally, he spoke. Do you lock the doors at night? The question hit me like a punch. My skin prickled. I tried to keep my voice steady. Only after close. We're 24 hours, though. He smiled then. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile you see on someone who knows a secret you don't want to hear. Minutes dragged by. He didn't touch the coffee. Didn't order food. Just sat there, eyes darting between me and the window, spoon still circling. Then, without warning, he stood up. The legs of the booth screeched as he slid out. He leaned across the table, palms flat on the surface, and whispered, "Don't go outside tonight." Before I could respond, he walked to the door, pushed it open, and disappeared into the dark. No car in the lot. No footsteps on the gravel. Just gone. Ray came out a minute later, wiping his hands. Where'd the guy go? I told him what happened, half expecting him to laugh. But instead, Ray frowned. What guy? My stomach dropped. The one sitting by the window. You didn't see him? Ray shook his head. Nobody came in. Bell didn't ring either. I've been listening. I swore up and down that someone had been there. The coffee cup was still on the table, steam rising from it. Ray walked over, picked it up, and cursed. The cup was ice cold. I didn't last long after that. 2 weeks later, I quit the diner and picked up shifts at the campus library instead. Safer. Brighter. But sometimes late at night, when I'm driving down empty roads, I think about that man. The way he stirred coffee he never drank. The way his smile didn't reach his eyes. And most of all, his words, "Don't go outside tonight." I still don't know what he meant, or what would have happened if I had. But I know one thing for sure. That was my last night shift. Ever. I grew up in Ohio in a pretty average suburban neighborhood, the kind where kids ride their bikes in cul-de-sacs until the streetlights flicker on. I live alone now in a small house I bought after a messy breakup. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. And honestly, I like the quiet. At least I did. The night everything changed started in the simplest way. I was brushing my teeth before bed, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed the faint glow of headlights through the blinds. At first, I thought maybe a neighbor had pulled into the wrong driveway, but the light didn't move. I peeked through the window. There was a car idling in my driveway. Black sedan. Windows tinted. I didn't recognize it, and I knew all my neighbors' cars by heart. I waited, expecting someone to get out. Nobody did. The engine hummed. My stomach tightened with a weird mix of confusion and dread. After a couple of minutes, the car slowly backed out, no rush, no screeching tires, just smooth. Then it disappeared down the street. I tried to shake it off. Maybe some lost driver using my driveway to turn around. Happens all the time, right? But when I checked my Ring camera the next morning, I froze. The car hadn't just pulled in. It sat there for 23 minutes. Engine running. No one got out. No one rolled down a window. Just sat there. And the weirdest part? My Ring camera didn't catch the license plate. Somehow, every frame where the plate should have been was a blur, like the pixels didn't want to cooperate. That was the beginning. The next night, I was half asleep on the couch when my motion alert went off. 1:12 a.m. I groaned, grabbed my phone, and checked the feed. There he was. A man standing in my driveway. Not near the car. Not walking up to the door. Just standing dead center facing the house. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Hoodie pulled up. Jeans. Hands in his pockets. He never moved, never knocked, never said a word. Just stared. I froze, watching him on my screen, heart thumping in my ears. I wanted to call 911, but part of me kept thinking, maybe it's a prank. Maybe he's drunk. Maybe it's nothing. I watched for 8 minutes. He didn't budge. Then, without warning, the camera feed glitched. Static, flicker, black. By the time it came back, the driveway was empty. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. The next morning, I called the police. 2 officers came by, checked the camera footage, and gave me the standard, "We'll keep an eye out." One of them even joked, probably just some teenager messing around. But the look in the other cop's eyes told me he didn't buy it either. The third night was worse. No car this time. No man in the driveway. I actually started to relax, thinking maybe it was over. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. My doorbell. 3 slow chimes. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My phone lit up with a notification. Motion detected. Front door. I opened the app. He was back. The same man. Hoodie. Hands in pockets. Except now he was closer than ever, standing directly in front of my door. The Ring's fisheye lens made his face hard to see, but I swear I could make out the faintest grin. I didn't answer. I didn't make a sound. After what felt like forever, he leaned closer to the camera. His lips moved, but there was no audio. The feed glitched again, crackling static, then black. When it came back, he was gone. By this point, I was terrified in a way I'd never felt before. Not the jump scare kind of fear, but the bone-deep realization that someone had chosen me, my house, my life as their target. I called the cops again. This time they took it more seriously. They promised to patrol the neighborhood, and one officer suggested I stay with family for a few nights. But I didn't have anywhere to go. My family was out of state and my closest friend lived 2 hours away. So I stayed. I double-locked the doors, kept the lights on, and slept with a baseball bat beside me. The final night, it all came to a head. It was around 2:30 in the morning when I woke up, not to a sound but to a feeling. That heavy, sinking dread that pulls you out of sleep before you even know why. I checked my phone. No alerts from the ring. No motion detected. Still, something felt wrong. I crept into the living room, peeking through the blinds. The street was empty. My driveway was clear. Relief washed over me until I noticed the faint glow inside the house. The Ring app was open on my phone. The live feed. Only I wasn't holding the phone. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, unlocked, showing the camera feed from the front door. And in that feed, he was inside, standing in my living room, looking directly at the camera. At me. I dropped the phone. My chest locked up, breath shallow, vision tunneling. I grabbed my bat and swung it wildly into the dark, but the room was empty. No footsteps. No sound of a door opening. Nothing. When I finally picked up my phone again, the feed was back to normal. Driveway empty. Door locked. But I knew what I saw. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I didn't sell the house, didn't call a moving company. I just drove. I didn't care where. I ended up renting a crappy apartment in another city under a different name. It's been almost a year now. No one's followed me, no strange cars, no hooded figures in the driveway. But I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. Sometimes late at night when my phone screen flickers, I swear I see him again. Just for a split second. Watching. Waiting. Like he's reminding me, I can find you whenever I want. My name's Sarah and I grew up in Virginia. When my grandfather passed away, he left his old farmhouse to me. It was one of those places that had been in the family for generations. White siding, wraparound porch, and acres of wood stretching behind it. Most people would have sold it. The place was falling apart. Peeling paint, sagging roof, creaky floors. But I couldn't. Too many childhood memories were tied to that house. Summers running through the fields, Christmases by the fireplace. So I moved in. At first, it felt comforting, like I was reconnecting with family history. But I learned quickly that the past doesn't always rest easy. The first few nights were fine. Quiet, peaceful. But then I started noticing little things. The clock in the hallway would stop every night at exactly 3:12 a.m. No matter how many times I wound it, set it, or replaced the batteries, it froze at that same time. Doors I swore I'd closed would be open in the morning. My shoes would be moved from the mat to the bottom of the staircase. I thought maybe I was sleepwalking. I even set up my phone camera one night just to check. That's when I realized it wasn't me. At 3:12 a.m., the video showed the clock hand stop. A moment later, the door to the cellar creaked open by itself. No wind, no draft, just opened. I sat frozen, watching the screen as a shadow passed across the hallway. Not mine, not anyone's I could recognize. But here's the worst part. The shadow wasn't walking toward the camera. It was walking up the stairs, toward the bedrooms, toward me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I went into the cellar. Dusty concrete floor, old shelves of canned peaches my grandma used to make, rusty tools. Nothing out of place. But when I turned to leave, I saw something carved into the wooden beam near the stairs. Letters, initials, HW. Those were my grandfather's initials. But underneath, carved deeper and darker, were words. Not his house. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was trying to tell me I didn't belong there. Over the next few weeks, the activity grew. I'd wake to the sound of boots pacing on the porch, but when I looked, nothing was there. I'd smell cigar smoke in the living room, even though no one in my family had smoked for decades. And always, at 3:12 a.m. something would happen. Sometimes a knock on my bedroom door. Sometimes whispers outside the window. Once, I swear I heard my grandfather's voice calling my name. But he'd been gone for 6 months. The final straw came one night when I was in the upstairs hallway. I heard creaking behind me and turned. For just a second I saw him, my grandfather, standing at the end of the hall. Except it wasn't him. His skin was ashen, his eyes too dark, too empty. His mouth moved like he was trying to speak, but no sound came out. I froze, whispering, "Grandpa?" He lifted his hand, pointed at the cellar door downstairs, and then vanished. I knew then I had to leave. I packed a bag that night and stayed with a friend. A week later, I sold the house to a distant cousin who wanted to keep it in the family. I didn't tell him what I'd seen. What would I even say? But every year, on the anniversary of my grandfather's death, I get a call. The cousin says the same thing each time. "Do you know why the clock always stops at 3:12? And every year I hang up, because I don't want to know. It still gives me chills when I think about it, because unlike ghost stories or paranormal stuff, this one was real. This was a person. A flesh and blood human being who could have changed my life, or ended it, on a random Tuesday night. I was 26 at the time, living in Western Kentucky. I worked late shifts at a distribution warehouse, so I usually didn't leave until close to midnight. My drive home was about 40 minutes on mostly empty highways. Sometimes the quiet was peaceful. Other nights, it felt like the world had emptied out and I was the only one left. One night, I stopped at a gas station about halfway home. It wasn't one of those big, well-lit chains. This was a small, old station tucked off the road, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzz overhead and half the pumps are out of order. I pulled in, swiped my card, and started pumping. That's when I noticed him. At first, he looked like just another customer. Mid-30s maybe, tall, wearing a dirty gray jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He was leaning against the side of the building, smoking. But something about him set off alarms in my head. It wasn't that he was watching me, it was the way he wasn't. His head was angled toward the ground, but I could feel his eyes on me. You ever get that? That gut deep sense when someone's sizing you up? I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd had a long shift, I was tired, and not every stranger is out to get you. Still, I kept my phone in my pocket and stayed alert. When my tank was full, I capped it, got in my car, and hit the lock button. That's when he moved. He started walking toward me. Not fast, not slow, just steady, deliberate steps. His cigarette still burned between his fingers, but his eyes were locked on me now, and there was nothing casual about it. I fumbled with my keys, started the engine, and pulled away. I didn't even look at him, just drove. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the middle of the lot, watching my taillights disappear. For the first 10 minutes, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe he just wanted to ask for change or directions or whatever. But then headlights appeared behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. But the car didn't pass. It kept its distance. Not too close, not too far. Just there. Every turn I took, it followed. My stomach sank when I realized it was the same car I'd seen parked near the gas station. A beat-up, dark-colored sedan with one headlight dimmer than the other. I told myself, don't panic. Maybe it's just going the same way. But then I tested it. I took an exit I never take, a long winding back road with barely any street lights. The sedan followed. Now my hands were slick on the steering wheel. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I remembered what my dad used to tell me when I first got my license. If someone's following you, don't go home. Don't lead them there. Drive to a public place. The problem was out here there wasn't a public place. Just empty road and thick woods on either side. That's when the sedan's headlights pulled closer. Too close. Blinding me in my mirrors. I pressed the gas. My little Corolla whined, engine straining, but I pushed it. 80. 90. The sedan stayed glued to me. I spotted a side road ahead and swerved onto it at the last second, tires squealing. The sedan overshot, but within seconds, its headlights swung around the corner back on me. That's when I knew this wasn't random. This guy was hunting me. Panic took over. I yanked my phone out, hands shaking, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone following me, I stammered. They've been tailing me since the gas station. I don't know what they want. Please help. The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady, exactly what I needed. She asked for my location, told me to stay on the line, and directed me toward the nearest police station. I followed her directions, flooring it down the twisting roads, headlights still burning behind me. The sedan swerved when I swerved. Every move I made he mirrored. Finally I saw it, a small brick building up ahead, lit with red and blue lights. The police station. I whipped into the lot so fast I nearly clipped the curb. I parked right in front of the entrance, slammed my horn and jumped out, waving my arms like a maniac. 2 officers came running out. The sedan slowed as it approached, hovering just at the edge of the lot. Then, without stopping, it turned and sped away into the night. The cops searched the area but didn't find him. They took my statement, checked the cameras around the station, and even had a cruiser patrol the back roads for a while. But the car vanished like it had never existed. They told me I'd done the right thing by not going home. The scary part? The dispatcher told me something else. I wasn't the first. There had been other calls in the past few weeks. Other drivers reporting a dark sedan that followed them late at night near that same gas station. No one had gotten close enough to see the driver's face. No one knew what he wanted. For weeks after, I jumped at every set of headlights behind me. I changed my routines, stopped going to that gas station, even moved apartments eventually. But sometimes when I'm driving alone at night, I'll catch sight of a car in my mirror. Dark sedan. One headlight dimmer than the other. And I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for the night someone isn't smart enough or lucky enough to make it to safety. My name's Emily, and I moved into my first real house 2 years ago. I was 27, and honestly just proud I'd saved enough to buy something on my own. The house wasn't perfect. It was a small, older place in Indiana with squeaky floors and drafty windows, but it had character, and it was mine. I remember standing in the driveway the first night after moving in, looking up at the little window above the garage. The realtor had told me it was just a storage room, unfinished and mostly empty. I didn't think much of it. Every house has its quirks, but I'd learned quickly that this one's quirk was darker than I ever imagined. The first week, everything felt normal. I was unpacking, decorating, starting to settle in. But little things started nagging at me. It began with sounds. At night, when the house was still, I'd hear faint creaks above the garage. Not the kind of settling noises old houses make. These sounded like slow, deliberate footsteps. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was just the wood expanding and contracting. But then I started noticing other things. A box of Christmas decorations I'd stacked in the garage shifted overnight. A broom I swore I left leaning in the corner was lying flat on the floor the next morning. Again, I made excuses. Moving is chaotic, right? Maybe I'd just forgotten where I'd put things. But one night, I woke up to something I couldn't explain away. It was 2:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I grabbed my phone off the nightstand when I heard it. A soft dragging sound, like something heavy sliding across the floor. It was coming from the room above the garage. I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound stopped. Then, slowly, I heard faint but unmistakable footsteps pacing back and forth directly above me. My stomach turned ice cold. I wanted to believe it was an animal, a raccoon maybe, but the weight of those steps, it was too heavy, too human. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I finally worked up the courage to check. I pulled down the creaky ladder that led to the garage loft, flashlight in hand. Dust swirled in the air as I climbed. The room was exactly as the realtor had said. Unfinished, dusty, just exposed beams and insulation. Empty except for some old paint cans and a broken chair. No footprints. No drag marks. No sign anyone or anything had been there. I told myself I was losing it. Stress, moving fatigue, and overactive imagination. I tried to laugh it off, but deep down I knew what I heard. Over the next few weeks, the activity escalated. Sometimes I'd come home from work and the light in the garage would be on, even though I always switched it off. Other times I'd hear muffled thuds at night, like something dropping upstairs. But the worst was the feeling. Every time I stood in the garage, I felt it, the sense of being watched. Not just from anywhere, always from that window above, the little one facing the driveway. Once while taking out the trash, I looked up. For half a second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing in that window. A dark silhouette, motionless. When I blinked, it was gone. I started avoiding the garage altogether. Parked on the street, carried groceries through the front door instead of the garage entrance. But that didn't stop the sounds. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the unmistakable sound of the garage door rattling. Not opening, not closing, just shaking violently like someone was pulling on it from the inside. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed, called 911, and waited. By the time the police arrived, everything was silent. They searched the garage, the loft, even the attic. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No footprints in the dust upstairs. The officer tried to reassure me. Old houses make weird noises. Probably just the wind. But I saw the look in his eyes when I mentioned the silhouette. He didn't believe it was just the wind. The breaking point came a month later. I was heading to work early one morning around 6 a.m. As I walked to my car, I noticed the small loft window above the garage was open. I froze. I hadn't opened that window. Ever. I forced myself to look. And that's when I saw it. A face. Pale, gaunt, eyes wide and unblinking. Staring down at me. I dropped my coffee, fumbled with my keys, and tore out of the driveway so fast I nearly hit the mailbox. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely steer. I called the police again, begging them to search the house. When they arrived, the window was closed. No sign of forced entry. Nothing disturbed. But I know what I saw.